service.
Oh,
So
okay.
if any error production, you can see them. That's it.
Great. Yeah, I've run into that issue so many times now. It'll be really good to start getting some diagnostic information on it.
Yeah.
And if you want, when we capture it, well, you'll have a log. Like I sent you an email. I assume you'll then be able to correlate that with something.
Those should be fixed.
Oh, okay, great.
So that one was simple. The others, I think, should be getting fixed as well. So the issue was she already had an account in the system, and so when she tried to log in with Google, it was trying to create a second account.
Yeah, I was afraid of that because Jay and I were registering her, and I didn't want to say it to you because it's like we were creating accounts the same way we did with guards. But then I was like, oh, I'm not sure how this is going to interact when they try to log in.
It's fixed.
Yeah.
It's fixed now, so it's not a big deal. But yeah.
And so what's the behavior if somebody, what's the behavior then in that situation?
It will try to find them by their email address and then link the Google account to that email address.
Okay. And if the name and all that stuff doesn't match, like if which one will take primary?
The name will come probably. That's a good question. I can set it up differently. I think right now it overrides the name.
Okay.
To the Google.
Meaning we keep the name from Google.
We keep the name from Google as like the source of truth.
Great. That's the decision I would make too.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark, for doing that. I think having the diagnostic information is going to be just super helpful.
Yeah.
And I hope you saw I started recording just so we can share this with Ahmed and
nice.
Yeah. So a lot of great stuff today. Again, have not collected my thoughts yet because we've been sort of like so deep in the thick of things. But just to sort of like talk through things, we did our first deployment with guards today. And I would say a lot of really interesting lessons from it. Oh yeah, can you see, Mark?
Nice, that's awesome. Yeah.
So on the top is Nolan deploying to guards and like basically sketching up a new approach because he was getting feedback from some of them on how to deal with situations like, well, sometimes we have trucks come in and we're nervous about whether the things that come in on the trucks, when the trucks are leaving, they seem to be full, and that's like people kind of bad behavior.
Yeah.
So Nolan was sort of sketching up response to that, and then on the bottom is Olivier and Nolan bug fixing while we're waiting to get our SIM cards at the local Airtel store. Which was kind of they were pushing some fixes as they went.
We looked at on that. Mark, this is a good example where we might want to start thinking about staging in production because we tried this morning and realized that the identity card no longer worked. The identity card brought us to the scan page.
Oh, yeah.
So something changed last night, and so Olivier just fixed it from while we were getting SIM cards.
That's great. We had time because the SIM cards were very slow.
Yeah, it took 2 hours to get SIM cards this morning.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and even that.
Apparently, he's got to go back and fix them. Do you hear?
No, what happened?
They asked for some paperwork wrong. He's got to redo it.
The SIM cards have to be registered to individual accounts. We tried to register them to a company account. They can't do more than like 3 or 5 SIM cards on one account. And then even with all that, they didn't activate the SIM cards. So it's just like, and the store opened an hour later than what was posted on Google. So we were waiting for an hour just to get into the store. And then it took another hour and a half to get them. It's just, it's a good lesson of just like, people joke here about running on Zambia. Olivia, what is it? Zambia relaxed regular time. Zambia regular time. And it's a good sort of reminder of just how many obstacles come up when the data network is really slow, or like construction's going on the road that goes between here and there, or the power's out for 14 hours at a time, and just sort of, or a gas station runs out of fuel. These are things that sort of like in our daily life, we're not grappling with these kinds of things, but it's just sort of like those things where you would go to work and be like, oh yeah, it was out of my control today. And that's sort of like the exception. It's like every day there's the thing that happened that was unexpected, that was out of your control, that people here need to deal with. And so it's just it's a good reality check on some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the guard deployment. So a few observations of the guards themselves. They were super engaged, and really knowledgeable about the kinds of situations that they were going to be facing, and sort of had a lot of domain context. And that was good. There were a lot of language barriers, so some of the guards could speak English pretty well, and others of the guards very little, like a few words here and there. So Poniso was translating. Olivier showed me this morning he actually was able to localize the homepage of the app into Nyanga, is it?
Yeah,
Nyanga. And so, so we did like a little lightweight skinning on it there, and I think that's going to be very valuable. The other thing that I think was relevant was there were definitely issues with dexterity and with keyboard. So one of the guards, for instance, it was clear he doesn't know how to type, and so every letter he had to like search for that. And he's and then another guard that I worked with, like his hands, he has construction hands, and so there's a lot of calluses on the fingers, and so the screen is not as responsive as our like soft tech fingers are used to. Right. So so bigger buttons were really valuable, and like it's not a matter of like being able to see it. Although I also want to say that if the guards are ever going to need to be using the screens in high lighting, I do think we need to be thinking about very high contrast and being able to see it in very bright light. So I think there are issues there that we need to be thinking about in terms of contrast, visibility, legibility, all of those kinds of things. We need to be thinking about this in a rough environment. Any Olivier or Jay, anything you want to add on the sort of the guards themselves?
Sorry, I was just distracted. I'm kind of coordinating with my
thing. No worries. Yeah.
Maybe Olivier.
Olivier, anything you wanted to say?
Not too much about how the algorithm being said. Maybe I think it's just trying to make it more easier for them. Like as you said, making more better to make it more extra.
Olivier, I'm not able to hear you at all.
Yeah, it's very soft.
Yeah, your sound is on, but it's too soft to be able to understand. Olivier,
can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I was saying, we just need to make it easier for them, like you were saying, by making the texture more readable and also the process easier for them to understand.
Okay.
Yeah, just to mimic like what normally goes on in their actual process, like what they normally do.
I wanted to say one of my favorite moments was when Poniso stopped being able to translate. Olivier just stepped in and he was translating into Nyanga for the guards, and it was just such a great joy, Olivier, to see you step into that, and just the great camaraderie you had with them, and the ability. I think the ability that having somebody on our team that was able to speak their language, I just can't stress how wonderful that was for me to be able to see that and to see you play that role. So thank you.
Thanks, Nada.
So then, in terms of the flow of the guards themselves, this really shifted my entire sort of framework of thinking about how we need to think about the guard UI. I think the guard, they basically started asking a lot of what if this, what if that, what if we get into this situation, what if we get into that situation? One of the biggest sort of early questions for them is like, what do you do with a construction truck? Because that's the biggest problem that we deal with. And I think one of our big assumptions coming in, we knew that these were trucks, but I don't think we ever sort of really internalized that these are like construction trucks coming from some other site of somebody who is like never going to register for the app, right? It's just like totally unrealistic to ask them to register. And the guard still needs to make a decision about whether to, to let that person in, call Poniso, or send them off. And so that's one thing that I think we just, as a use case, need to be grappling with. The other is around, I think the framework of how we need to think about the interface for the guards is almost like a workflow, like almost like they're filling out a form. So you start on the first screen actually from the very get-go, the first screen should not look the same as the first screen for any other type of user. It should just be a like, do you want to log in via SMS? Or as Jay was mentioning, we might even just allow them to log in with their QR code, so that you could log in with your own QR code into the app. I know that if you lose your ID card, that's potentially a security risk. But at the same time, right now, the only thing that a guard can do is stand waiting at the gate and sort of either grant or deny and have it go into a logbook. So I think it's one of those things where it may seem like a little insecure, but it's actually, there's the risk of something going wrong from that is really quite low. Because somebody else is going to have to be standing at the gate too. So if somebody's trying to impersonate a guard, like the other guard at the gate's going to be like, "What are you doing? Checking people in and out of the app," you know. So I think there's actually, like Jay was pointing out, like scanning in with your code could be it also could be like a good cultural thing. So I'm thinking like the guard login page is like QR code and or SMS, and then the second screen is like, am I checking in a person? Or am I logging the entry of a truck, or am I logging the exit of a truck? And you basically tap on a button, and it's all pictorial. So you tap on it, and then it takes you to the next thing. If you're tapping on a person, then the next thing is like, do you want to scan them, or do you need to collect some information because this is somebody that's like a totally unknown person? If it's a truck, the kinds of things that they want to know are like, what plot number are you going to? Right? That was the very first question that people ask. So you could just have them do that, and you open it up. And one of the things we realized is that whenever you're typing numbers, we need to switch to a phone pad rather than a keyboard with numbers across the top, because the numbers across the top are just too small. And it's too easy to sort of mistype one. So we just want to switch to like a phone number pad under a, where you're entering a code.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
And then, and basically what we want to do is just have a flow of the information that a guard needs to collect, and basically be guiding them through that step-by-step process with the app. So there's no process that's separate from the app. The app itself is the process that they follow.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Olivier, if you're able to hear, you can come use my hotspot outside, and we could sit far enough that the audio wouldn't be too much of a problem. Are you able to hear me? Can you say yes or no on the chat? Okay. So Olivier is going to come out and join. So Mark, Olivier and I started mocking some of that stuff up. I'll send you screenshots of that because I left them inside. I don't want to take the time now to go and walk in and get them. But we drew some things out, some sketches that we can sort of just narrate later. Oh, and it looks like Olivier is bringing them here, so I might just we could take some pictures and upload them right now, and then that should sort of give you some sense of what we're thinking. But the basic idea is that at any one time, you're not going to be doing you're not going to have more than 2 or 3 different kinds of questions that you might ask somebody, or pieces of information that you need to do. So have them really big, really present on the screen, and the app is the workflow that you're going through. A very different kind of mentality than what we were thinking. And, and Mark, I'll just upload a picture right now while Olivier is getting connected. The pin is 9999. They're going to be working. So Mark, I'm just going to put this in a Slack channel, and then we can share a screen and look at it together.
Okay.
Do you have the other screenshot, the other drawings that we did? Okay. Do you mind? Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. Sorry, Mark. Give me a second here, because I'm going to just set Olivier's computer up on our Wi-Fi here. You remember what I was telling you about the barriers? Like, he's sitting inside, and the network is slow there, and this is the kind of thing.
Is there any reason why?
Yeah.
Can I interrupt you for a quick second?
Yeah.
Hezron was offering to set up the phones with SIM data, or I guess call data or whatever, call minutes or something. Mobile data.
Yeah.
Should we do that with him now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I should hand him the phone.
Yeah. The other thing, just so you know, so I think we should do that now, just so we have something working. The other thing we're thinking about is just getting a MiFi for the gate itself, so that when they're at the gate, we can have as fast a connection as possible, and just have a Wi-Fi thing sitting there. But I'd say get them set up with the data and the calling for now. And then we'll solve the other thing separately. I just wanted you to know, because that way you can buy data for one access point, and it'll enable whoever is there, and you don't have to be buying data for multiple phones.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Great, we're here, Mark, and so let me let you do this, Olivier. You got it, okay. And Mark, did you get that screenshot?
Looking now, Slack. There we go.
Okay, so I'm just gonna, these are all like, should be interpreted in the spirit of brainstorming. These are not like, this is not a working, there are a lot of things that I think are still not well thought through in all these diagrams. So,
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Big buttons. No, it makes sense. I mean, it's going for more of like a, a very application-specific flow.
Yeah.
Versus like a CRM that you can also check people into. It's more like, there's actually like a real flow to it. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and my thinking is that like over time, right, you just have like you want a way of making it easy for Poniso and Hezron to make a new security policy and then enforce that new decision tree by changing it in the app.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, for now, that's something we would do, but longer term, I could totally imagine that this is something where essentially the programming that you need to do is really just outlining the logic of the decision tree, and then it translates naturally into like the blocks or the cards that show up on one page versus the next. Right.
Yep.
So
sure.
in terms of the guards, like navigation, it was actually quite difficult. It was clear that there were some guards who have never used a smartphone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we encountered a lot of friction, even just getting to the place where like logging into, I realized just how complicated it was to log into Chrome and open a URL, and like that, all of that complexity was just, that was just totally unmanageable to go through. So what we did is we made app.doublegdp.com the home screen, and then moved, and then basically in Android, you can create that as a, you can add it to the home screen of Android.
Yeah.
So we can do that, and then we just want to call that in Quashi and put a logo on that, and so do that. And then we also want to configure the phone. So basically, I want to uninstall all the other apps so that you go into the phone and you have it in Quashi app, and it's just all there. The other thing is latency was still sort of like a major issue. So I think pretty soon, and frankly, that's an issue at the office too. We talked about Thelma and like using a CRM, and she says, yeah, one of the biggest problems with using a CRM is that like we just can't do it from the office because, when your data is down for like 10 minutes, it's like, what do? You can't use anything. And so I think we should be thinking very aggressively about caching policies, so much so that my thinking is we should have the entire database cached on the phone, and then just be synchronizing data when there's a connection available. And so like, if you're 2 minutes out of date or 5 minutes out of date, like that's not going to really have an impact on security issues. But that way everything stays in sync, sort of behind the scenes, kind of like in a Dropbox fashion, right? But the app is fully functional without any kind of data.
Okay.
Again, in the spirit of brainstorming, right? This is not like
Yeah.
I
think that's the right direction. Just have to think about what that actually entails. But yeah, I agree.
Yep. Other places I got like really high latency was in the upload of photos. So that's the other kind of thing that like what we want to do is do do a real thin version of it there, and then upload the high res version in the background, right? And lazy loading of any photos that are in the system and things along those lines. Again, are all going to be important. I don't know the priority of those right now, but just sort of communicating sort of where we are.
Yep.
You want to talk through some of the design explorations that we did?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so okay, so let me start here. You able to see it okay?
Yeah. Yep.
So here, basically, this is what we're thinking for the login screen. That basically, so one of the things we're thinking is that for guards, since we're just going to have them have a home page that's different, we should just give them a login screen that's totally different than anybody else's. And then if somebody's logging in from that screen, we just know that they're of type guard. So we're thinking almost like have a app.wgdp./guard login. It doesn't, we can cut, I don't mean that that's the right URL, but just like a page that's just.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yep.
And then the more I think about the QR code login kind of thing, the more I like it, because it's just a very simple way of getting them to log in. Then what we're thinking, so this diagram sort of evolved a little bit, but think of this as a decision tree. So the idea is that the first decision that they need to make is, how do I log in, by QR code or SMS? Okay, we definitely have to have a server hit there. And then you say, okay, what is it that you need to do? Do you need to identify a person? Do you need to talk about a truck that's either in or out? One of the things we're thinking is that you should always be able to call Poniso from whatever sort of state you are. Like somebody weird shows up, you don't want to have to go through a whole bunch of steps to be like, something weird is happening, I want to call Poniso. So have a call Poniso button right there. And then the other thing is just have a switch guard, so that there's like a one-click thing that is like logs you out and brings you right back to the other guard login screen.
Okay.
Okay. And then, so from there, now thinking depth first, right? If it's a person, then it's like, okay, I want to either scan them in, right? Or do they not have an ID and I just want to record something? So let's say it's a guest. And then if they're a guest, the first question I need to ask is, what plot number are you, right? And then they can enter the plot number, and that has that also has like a dialogue that has a dial pad, and then they can either log or deny, right?
Okay.
And then, or if you're not going to give us a plot number, tell us the name of the person that you're visiting. Right, and we now have a list of all of the residents on the site. So I don't yet know how to solve this like from an interface perspective. So you could probably have the guard type in the first few letters of the name and have that show up. That may be difficult for some guards. Maybe we even think about like showing an alphabet that's in alphabetical order could be another way of doing it. Like instead of a keyboard, you could have like, you only type the first 3 letters of the name. The other UI thing we might want to just play around with is those guards are used to sending text messages with their phones. So you know how you do a text message by like typing 333 gives you the letter C. Yeah. So we might even see if that's like a natural interface for them that you use a dial pad. What's that?
T9. Remember old T9 on the Nokia phones where you typed in SMS?
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, all in exploratory mode, but the idea is that you might either just get the plot number or you get the name of the host. And obviously very soon those should be fairly synonymous for us, right? If we know the plot number, we know the name and we could verify that. Or if we know the name, we should know the plot number and we can verify that, right?
Okay.
Then if it's a truck, it's a little bit more complicated. So let me come back to that on another screen. And then the other thing that we might want to think about is that, you know, a guard might get all the way through and they might say, yes, I want to grant entry to this person. But there was also something that was a little bit strange. And so maybe the thought was that maybe at any place along this process, there's always like a flag kind of thing, that it's like, I'm going to move forward in the process, but I just want to say like something is striking me as funny. So I'm going to flag it.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, that doesn't interrupt the flow. You're still going through the flow, but it's just like, yeah, this is a way of sort of noting that.
Okay. That makes
Let's see. So let's go to the next screenshot here. So then, oh yeah, so now we started thinking about, yeah, so this one is actually a more evolved version of the same thing. So this is an idea of what that first thing on the decision tree might look like, where
Okay.
At the top, now you have a little bit more room up here on that top nav because you don't have the search bar or the scan bar or anything like that. So maybe you just have
Okay.
like their profile picture and notification, or maybe that's the flag kind of thing. Maybe that's where that flag icon goes, right? And then you have person, truck entering, truck exiting, and then down below that's not drawn is the call Poniso and switch guards, right? But that would be sort of like
Okay.
below the fold. So that could be like the first screen, that could be the home screen, right?
Okay.
And then the next one is, oh, Olivier, where did we talk about what would be on the empty full kind of paradigm? Oh, that's on this first one? Oh, yeah, up here. Okay. And so, Mark, then on this one, so on the truck thing, one of the core questions that they're asking is, how many people on the truck?
Okay,
And so the idea is you have like a full screen thing that has a large number and a plus on one side or a minus on the other,
Yeah.
and you just sort of like adjust for the number of people
Yeah.
on the truck.
I like that.
And then is the truck full, empty? Is the truck full or empty? Right? Like as a basic signal, right? If the truck's coming in and it's leaving empty, that's pretty good. If the truck is coming in empty and leaving full, that's pretty bad, right? And maybe it needs to be like full half or empty half or full, right? The way that you could think of, we even sort of like we're playing around with the idea that like you could have a cup that is like empty, a cup that is like 1/4 full, a cup that's a half full, or a cup that's full. I don't think cup,
Yeah.
I don't think cup is the right kind of thing, but like
Right. Something like
some
yeah.
visual metaphor for saying like how full is the truck, and then like it just gives the guard on the exiting of the truck some way to say like, hey, I saw that you came in full, something's weird, I'm going to call Poniso, right?
Yeah.
And even if they don't escalate right in that minute, right? Even if they're like, okay, I noted that the truck had 1/4 of the stuff still in it, and it just goes in the notes as being the truck was 1/4 full when it left, and then okay, so they got away with some stuff that time. Then Poniso could look
Poniso
at
can
the
figure
log.
out that it's a friend.
Right, Poniso could look at the log
Yeah.
and say, oh, I actually
Yeah,
don't trust that
something's
guy
weird.
anymore. And the next time they show up, I want you to flag them, right?
Yeah.
And so the next time the guard identifies that that same truck is coming in, we have some way of saying, yeah, I want to come talk to this person before they come in. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yep.
So we haven't yet given any thought to how to identify the truck. It could be like a license plate. Maybe what we do is like we take a picture of the license plates if that's too much for the guards to do, and then we send it to like Mechanical Turk, and the Mechanical Turk, changes the license plate into a number so that we have a code or something. Or I do that for the time being, like depending on how many we're getting. But like we can figure out some back-end process for translating a picture into a license plate number.
Yep.
But the way I'm thinking is like, how can we make it super, super fast and easy for the guard to get the identification, even if that truck doesn't have a QR code on it?
Yeah, and the thing about the photo is definitely the latency as well, going back to that.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm thinking is like, again, I guess I'm living sort of in the dual world of like, I'm not yet in the world of like, what do we do next week? I'm sort of
Yeah.
thinking like, what does it need to be? And longer term, we can just take the picture and make very low latency for closing that interaction and then upload it to the cloud when data, like over time, right?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that at some point we get to that state where that's the way the app works.
Yep.
And then the other question that was really important is around materials. are you bringing in bricks or water or gas, or like, what is it that you're bringing? And I think that that's sort of like part of like how you sort of, what the process is for identifying the truck right now.
Yep.
Oh, and then the final thing was like, if they're actually talking with a host and we have the plot number, like you could actually call the host right there and say, hey, I have this person coming to see you. Is that right? Or we could be thinking about a flow where you say, ask the host, and the host has to either pre-approve or approve right then. And you know, the guard could say, I'm sorry, you're not pre-approved. I need to wait till I hear back from the host. Do you want to call the host and tell them to approve you, right?
Yeah.
Or they could be pre-approved or anything like that.
That makes sense.
Okay, that is basically all from the guard meeting. Let's talk there. We have some other meetings later that we had later, but let's talk through that first. Questions, thoughts?
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, this is it's exciting that you guys have boiled this down into sort of the next big movement on the app. So it's all extremely valuable. I think that the thing, you know, obviously there's going back and talking with Ahmed about what the design looked like.
Yeah.
From the latency issue, I mean, I know we want to solve it. I'm just trying to think. I'm going to need to go and noodle on that and think about ways to get that solved. I mean, basically what we're asking for is like a decentralized database that somehow goes and updates to a centralized one at some point, or, you know, does a diff and says like, here's the things that changed in my system, and then I need to update this to the other system. The other stuff is all fairly, like, I wouldn't say trivial, but it's pretty trivial, right? Like, I mean, once we get the design and have the idea of the flow, we should be able to implement that pretty fast. Really just comes down to like, nothing seems complicated in that. The QR code scanning, the login, we can do that really well if we just add in some type of, we'll just add like an authenticity token onto the end of the code, so that it would have to be printed by an admin, basically. Like, it's not just your ID, it's your ID plus like some unknown number that we would just have on your record.
What is it?
So
what does that
basically,
mean?
well, so right now, if you know the GUID of the user, you could log in as them. I mean, I don't think this is a big deal, but you could basically make it so that it's the GUID plus like another number that's in the database, right?
Oh, so
it's
each
like,
guard knows their own number.
well, no, I'm just saying you could make the guard's barcodes in a way that nobody else could reproduce them unless they're an admin, like the person printing them out, right?
Oh yeah, I'm not.
But it's not that big of a deal. I don't think it's a concern.
The only thing I'm concerned about is the guard losing their card and not realizing it, and somebody else trying to scan them with that code. So
that's what I'm saying, is you can make it so that their ID doesn't change, and then the only thing you change is you would just create a new printed barcode that would have a new sequence.
Right. You're saying how to invalidate. Right. How do you invalidate that card? Okay, got it.
So you just invalidate it that way, and then you're like, it's fine. Nobody's gonna go jump through too many hoops and try to log in as a guard at the end of the day. But
I see. So you're just saying, okay, I got it now. So the guard basically, they lose their card. They tell Poniso, hey, I lost my card. Poniso says, yeah, no problem. I'll print you a new one. And as soon as he prints a new one,
the new one has a different number at the end, and then it's like, okay, the other one's invalid. So
totally got it. Very smart. Very clever. Yeah.
So I don't think that'll be hard. That's the only small change there. Yeah, I guess we have to really bias towards like large buttons, which makes sense for the tactile issue. I hadn't even thought about the callus on your hands, like a very valid issue. On the A10, I guess the screen pretty sensitive. Like, I know the blue, like I can't imagine, I can barely get it to register contact, but I can only imagine how bad it would be if you had calluses on your hand. But the A10, I guess it's doing okay.
Oh yeah,
otherwise
were great. And no problems with vertical scrolling. So I mean, I think, you know, and I think especially with the localization, like, you know, we'll have it in Nyanja. We'll have the word in Nyanja, but I think the iconography will be clear. You know, they're clearly very intelligent people. I was just really so.
You've never used smartphone.
Yeah, it's just, you know, if you've never used a smartphone.
Give them like a month on YouTube on the smartphone, and they're going to be pros. So
we're a little worried about that too. We're starting to think about how do we do device management. And honestly, the issue is not so much them using the phones, but using up data. That's like data is a currency here. You know, it's like it's just like you run out of data, and then all of a sudden you can't do anything.
It's still so much cheaper than here. But I guess there it's still, yeah.
The issue is not even so much about the money, but that in order to get the data, you have to physically go someplace and get the card and then enter the PIN into the code. And so it's like it's a 24-hour turnaround by the time you lose data to the time that it's accessible again. It's not like there's just a central account where Poniso is like, okay, great, I've topped it up for now, but no more YouTube.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, the good news about that is, and I think you found out a lot of this, but you can lock down Android pretty well.
Yeah.
So you could potentially lock it down and say, like, you can only access these apps, and it has to be done.
We don't know how to do any of it yet, so that's all learning.
Yeah, but that stuff we'll do while we're here. We brought all the phones back with us to sort of lock them down, make it easier. I think Jay and Olivier wanted to say something, so I'm going to go on mute here.
I'm running low on battery, so I just wanted to
It's somebody else. There we go.
Yeah, so I'm running low on my battery, so I just want to share my screen with the flow that I was trying to implement from what we discussed earlier with Nolan and Jay. So to have more things here, people would have person, track.
Nice. Yeah.
Then also we're also planning to have switch guards, like when the guards are switching, because they have a shift. So one works during the day, another one works at night. I think they might also make it like an 8 hours thing rather than the whole day. I don't know. But yeah, so Nolan suggested that we keep it on one page rather than going to separate pages. Right now it looks like it's going to a different page, but it's just like on the same page. So then from there, so you either choose if it's a person that's coming in, then you choose if you are going to scan them, or if it's a guest. So the guest this is in case they are either going to a plot of someone or they are visiting a relative, right? Yeah. Then so when you click on a guest now, it brings you the input where you now put in the name of that guest, the host names. This is now the person who is a resident of Nkwashi. Then the number of where they are going. So this can also be applicable for the I think for people who are taking the materials, right? Or just someone who's going to the plot.
I think the guest again, this is all sort of like take grain of salt, but the way I was thinking about guest was somebody who's going to visit a known person.
Yeah.
And then I think there's a different concept of somebody that's going for a picnic.
Oh yeah.
Right. So we might that page might have like resident, guest, or picnic goer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, work in progress in terms of those concepts.
Yeah. Like if we need to be most flexible, it just can be like temporary, temporary, not guest, because I guess a guest is connected to a resident, so it's someone who's not connected to a resident.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the other case they brought up was like, what about somebody who's going to the mall to shop?
Temporary visitor.
Right? There's going to be a shopper. There's going to be somebody shopping there, right? And it's like, it's still a question of policy of whether MWIA will want them to have an ID.
Yeah.
But I think the point is that the application we should be thinking about this as a way of enforcing a workflow decided by Nkwashi, and that workflow is going to evolve very, very quickly. So the idea is that whatever those choices are, they show up as blocks on that page.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So Mark, I've done this, but haven't hooked it up with the backend yet. Nolan had suggested that we get these details and we attach them as notes for the user, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I checked in the graphical playground, I didn't find like notes. So I don't know if I can push this and you can hook it up in the background. The backend.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I'll do that.
And Mark, just to translate that idea, the idea is that there's going to be so much that it depends on whether you want to be updating the data model regularly, or if you want to have like a catch-all kind of like, we can do some things that are pushing beyond what we have pre-designed. And then sort of we have a way of like looking through the notes and sort of learning from it over time. And we can keep logging more information, and the front end can evolve somewhat separately than the back end in that way.
Yeah. That makes sense. I agree.
Olivia, did you want to show other things?
I think that's what I was.
Jay, did you want to talk? No?
No, I'm good. The thing I did, Hezron was probably ready to go.
Oh, okay.
And not, he's just wrapping up with the SIM cards, but in about 5 minutes. So
Okay.
should wrap. I have a meeting, I have a call at the beginning at 7.
Oh, okay, great. So, Mark, we need to wrap in like 5 minutes. So I'll give you one. The other update that we had was we had a good meeting with all the heads of the departments that Jay led. Do you want to say something about that, or do you want me to just give my take on it?
Why don't you give your take on it?
I
felt like
your
I was
notes?
a little tired.
Okay.
So
Can I upload
yeah.
that? Mark, I'll take a screenshot of our notes there.
It was hard to do co-design, but we did the entire walkthrough with them, and like their gut on, hey, quick high level of what happened. We designed a little bit of a co-design session for them that was primarily walking through all of the most important parts of the application, and just like, here's what, like the headline, here's what the app does. What ideas do you have for that particular service in the app, and what most important next steps do you think we need in order to actually get your entire population of customers using it?
Okay.
And so we walked through step by step by step. We created accounts for them while we were doing it, showed them how to log things, like all that kind of stuff. And then we sort of like talked next steps and stuff like that. And honestly, most of their feedback and like most important next steps, the things they wanted to ask for in terms of ideas were further roadmap things. So there were things like digital inventory for their warehouse, because they have a warehouse that would actually have a similar guard, like access control thing, where you're like, hey, is someone allowed to come into the warehouse and get a tire? Approved, not approved. And you could like, from the office basically approve someone to be able to come in and do that. Their head of finance was basically like, at some point we would really love to have a digital inventory management system where we can kind of approve people bringing things in and out of that warehouse. There's a lot of like spare parts management and a lot of cost control issues that end up coming through there. So that was a really interesting conversation. There was also a very significant conversation about how to use this app as sort of a connective tissue between the other sort of database systems that they have, like all the different places where some of their customer information lives. So they've got like an ERP, they've got like a system where they manage their payment plans, a system where they manage their construction plans, all that kind of stuff. And so there's a real desire, because all of those things are disparate, a desire to be able to allow a paying client to see sort of progress by progress where they are on each of those in different things that they are making payments on. So it's a down the road thing for us, but a really attractive one in terms of getting users to be able to log in. And then finally, we had a little bit of a conversation. Like I basically asked, hey, what's the best step in order to get the existing clients onto the system? And they were like, well, like, why don't we just log all of them into the system? Here's the list. And so we've got a great little database that we can kind of take a look at. And they're a little bit frustrated with their customer list because they've had to work through an ERP that is managed in Kenya. And when they want data in a particular way, they've got to like go back to to those guys. And so there's a real opportunity here to basically look at the data they have and figure out how to actually create the mappings in a way that makes sense to them and the work that they're trying to do, as opposed to them the way it needs to be twisted in some sort of other way, because the software is not flexible.
Yep.
So those are a couple top line observations.
A lot of but it makes sense. I mean, there's like really two products here, I guess. It's this. You have the guard, which we're tackling first, but then there's this larger, just like ERP managing an organization. Really, like it's no different than a manufacturing operation / It's just it's kind of everything. It's just a huge org.
Yeah, I think in the way I'm thinking about it is that our system is fundamentally a CRM and an ERP. And the guard just has a lightweight interface for how to. There's a pictorial based interface for how to get the information that we're going to then log into the system.
Every CRM and ERP system out there, they all kind of come down to that. Like, here's the core, the core basic pieces that CRM system, but then you build all these little applications that feed off of it, right? So Salesforce is like very much a like, here's a small application that feeds off the central database. So yeah, it kind of makes sense. Like the Guard's just another one of these small applications.
So the big takeaway I had from that was also they're actively considering a Salesforce and Trello solution right now, and she's also evaluating Mention. And I told Thelma that I would like the opportunity to compete with Salesforce, and see, tell me what it is that you need, and let's see if we can meet those needs. I think she's not at all thrilled with Salesforce, doesn't really want to go do it. And I was like, look, we can't do all the things that Salesforce does, but the things that you actually need, we may be able to do better and faster and grow more quickly with you. So I would love to be their system of record as soon as possible, and I think there's a real opportunity to do that in the next.
I would say this: we have a lot of bugs and a lot of things to work out in our system, but it's still better today than Salesforce.
Okay, great.
Salesforce is like the worst system I've ever.
Yeah, so
It's the worst system in the world.
Yeah.
I'm
amazed every time I see their building in San Francisco. I'm like, how is this possible?
Well, they do a lot of things that we're not yet capable of doing, but they do them all poorly. We can do more. We can do fewer things and do them much better. But I think most of the things that Salesforce can do, they don't need. So.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So I uploaded some pictures for you. She actually gave me a login to one of her to one of their systems. So where you see my fingers, that's me. I've censored a little bit.
Yes.
What's that?
That's a good censoring. I noticed that.
Yeah. But I think we need to go for now. So these notes may not be comprehensible yet, but we can talk through more of
No, that's fine. I'll work on a couple different things, but I mean, I'm just finishing up some of the other small bugs and then just kind of knocking out this bug flow, and then I guess one thing I can dive into is a bit more thinking about the latency and if we can solve some stuff there. But
and I think I can talk with you later this evening, so this afternoon your time, evening mine, and we can think about some priorities of what to show, what we want to do for rapid progress and getting things going, because I haven't yet processed that, but I'll get in touch with you later today and we can talk through what is low hanging fruit. And then also Jay and I are going to we're going to the picnic tomorrow. So we'll meet a lot of the residents, and we'll have an opportunity to register a bunch of people. So it could be that
you're pretty
we need to do that. Is there a way to mark our pre-approval in the application, Mark? Okay.
Build that. That's a big priority one for me today.
Right.
Build the picnic.
As a general use case, that idea of pre-approval comes up very, very often.
Yeah.
I want to be able to go to somebody's profile and approve them for 12 hours to do something.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So
okay.
Great.
I can think about
Anything else you want to add?
Hey Mike, so I've pushed and made a pull request, so you can check from that one. Yeah, there isn't much, but I just started working on the flow that we discussed with Nolan.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'll start checking all that in and pushing that out.
Thanks. All right.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right.
Talk later.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.